The tax on transactions involving cryptocurrencies and NFTs has been proposed to be reduced by at least 50%. That is taking it to 1.5% under the Finance Bill 2025-2026. I'm Regina Mayera, and we want to find out what impact will this proposal have on players in this particular space. Joining us is none other than Larry Cook, who is the head of Legal Africa Binance. Thank you very much for your time. Before we speak these amendments and so much more within the digital space, let's unpack what is Binance.
What is Binance? Simple definition, it is a crypto exchange. It's a virtual asset service provider, digital asset service provider. But I want to simplify it even further. It is a community that problem solves. And the problem that we solve for is the flow of money, the movement of value. Let me not even say money, the movement of value.
The digital tax, now 1.5 down to 1.5%. What's your take on that? What impact will it have?
It is welcome, the fact that they've decreased the tax rate, because it shows that they are willing to engage with market participants. You know, they're willing to try and understand and try and create an ecosystem that is conducive, that could attract. However, there are still some fundamentals that need to be adjusted, or we recommend at least should be adjusted, because the mechanics of it is kind of counterintuitive in terms of what they're trying to achieve.
So some critics are saying that though this is a decrease of 50% to 1.5%, that is a crypto levy there, they're saying that it could raise transactional costs. What's your take on that?
Yes, it would translate into additional costs, but the fundamental question that we proposed to parliamentary when we made, some of the submissions is that what is the objective for Kenya? Like, what does Kenya want from this new ecosystem, right? If you're trying to attract foreign direct investment, if you're trying to grow innovation and creativity in terms of new solutions, right? You need to then massage these type of topics and such changes so that they're actually conducive and achieve the effect that you want. Now, if you look at tax, it needs to be looked at with a wider scope, because you have corporate income tax, you have virtual asset, you have value-added tax, and now you have a third level of tax, which is the digital asset tax. From an investor's perspective, it doesn't necessarily welcome us in, because you have to get through various layers of tax before you actually start seeing the return. And it's not about paying tax or not paying tax, because tax is inevitable. It's one of the certain things, death and tax, right? But it's at what point in time do you tax? And likewise, with this ecosystem that Binance is privileged to be a part of, right? Because we're a community, we have education, we have a lot more than just the transaction of value and the transfer of value from point A to point B. We need enough space to make the market comfortable and grow that adoption, right? And without burdening that cost factor on the consumers at a point in time when they're still trying to get familiar with this world.
Right. Let me be the devil's advocate in this, because when we hear, government come out and say that we've heard the cry of persons who are operating in this digital space, and now we have brought down the tax, by 50%, that is half, 1.5. It has recognized that those who are playing, the players have been recognized as small traders, digital artists as well as gamers and such. Are you saying would you have recommended they do away with it?
What we're proposing is something that is beneficial for the entire ecosystem. It's not something that we're asking for to be removed just for the sake of removal. What we're saying is that if the intention of the Kenyan government is to attract foreign direct investment, if the intention of the Kenyan government is to grow innovation and really compete at an international level, not even just a Pan-African level, then we need to reconsider the traditional approaches that we're applying on an emerging, new, innovative sector. And I'll end it by saying this as well. If the VAT is exempted, right, you still have CIT that's being paid by corporates, right, because Binance is a corporate. But at the same time, when you look at the digital asset tax, because of the impracticalities of its implementation, right? Because of the volatility of assets that's being converted, or at the point in time we have to pay the taxpayer that, the tax revenue authority that those funds. At the point in time we need to identify who and when we have to tax, because it's a withholding tax structure that puts the obligation on the crypto exchange rather than on the individual. So it's almost that we play in the taxman's responsibility to collecting tax. Now, collecting tax has always been a sticky subject in all economies, right? But you might scare the people that might be more comfortable to start paying tax by putting all these layers of tax on it so early in the game.
Okay. So does the tax policy in its current form, do you find it prohibitive when it comes to crypto innovation?
The short answer would be yes, but I don't say yes lightly, because we acknowledge the fact that, you know, the Kenyan Revenue Authority and the government is listening to the sector, and they've already changed it. Like you said, they've decreased it from 3% to 1.5%. That shows that they hear us and they want to encourage the innovation. They want to attract the FDI. But it's the mechanics, understanding when is a taxable event, understanding what is a taxable asset, and then understanding who are the tax players, right? And if you look at those three components, and I don't want to get into too much legal jargon, but if you look at those components, I think using traditional ways of application, it doesn't fit in this space verbatim or like for like, because when you talk transactions, imagine being charged a tax for taking money from your savings account to your check account, and then taking from your check account and then putting it back to your savings account. And each time you do that, you get taxed. So that is the impractical and irrational, and in fact, based on the Kenyan constitutional considerations, that we say that it doesn't make sense and it's not practical, it's not feasible, it's not workable.
The critics of this particular move, you know, the whole tax policy around the digital space, digital trading, digital asset tax, argue that this could actually push towards informal or offshore channels, you know, for trade. What's your take on that?
Again, I don't want to call them critics, but I do think that they make valid points. And as a community, we need to not see each other as opposition or competition when we're having these conversations, right? Because at the end of the day, this is a new industry that will be creating jobs, and not creating jobs like Binance is now going to make all these hires, but every single sector will now start embracing crypto technology. That means more hires for the youth, more innovative products. That means more stimulus into the economy. So when they say that, right, it's understanding the risk, because it's the good actors that want to get regulated. It's the good actors that engage government and say, let's find a solution for this. Binance, we have about 23 licenses in various markets, right? Regulation is never something that we oppose. In fact, we encourage, we welcome regulation, because that is a mechanism that chases away the bad actors. So if you're working with regulated entities and there's the regulatory regime, right? Of course, the good players will participate in that, but the not so good players, right, might find that because there's so much red tape and there's so much taxation and there's so much, their business can't take off the way it should. So what do? They resort to to bad practice.
Bad practice. On that particular note, now the European Union has designated Kenya as a high-risk jurisdiction, you know, for money laundering and terrorism financing, you know, and the conduit, or rather the platform, is crypto, right? As a player within this particular industry, what is your take on that particular listing, and what does it mean for crypto, transactions going forward?
This is not a new phenomenon. Kenya is not seen in isolation to that. They've listed a whole bunch of other countries earlier this week. The European Commission highlighted that AML is obviously a concern. And if you look at it, various countries were also added to the FATF grey list because of certain concerns that were raised about AML and addressing terrorist financing. So when you look at that issue, AML, ABC, they always called anti-bribery and corruption. It's not a new phenomenon. It exists in the fiat and the traditional finance world, right? Crypto is just a small infancy space where this is also being replicated. But what's nice about crypto and the underlying technologies about it is that it's immutable, so it's traceable and it's traceable, but it's also gives better security in terms of getting recourse. So what does that look like? If you have more transactions on chain, that means you have a ledger that will always record what happened and where did that value go. And that actually aids it. So as opposed to seeing it crypto players versus banks and crypto virtual asset service providers should be working together, because they have a certain view of certain remit that they see. But once it goes from fiat into crypto, we have the remit and we have visibility in terms of those transactions. And it's those type of relationships that should mature, so that ultimately we can both address the bad actors in the space. Stifling that with extreme or arduous tax provisions, it makes it difficult to collaborate, because those taxes are more than even what we charge from a commission perspective. So balancing that out is difficult, but we need to be very careful when it comes to that.
Some of the other non-legislative reforms that were included in the budget, the proposed budget 2025-2026, include the fast tracking of the finalization of the national policy on digital finance. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I think that's a step in the right direction. I think it's complementary, because again, regulators don't operate in isolation, even though it appears to be that way at times. But ultimately, this digital economy, right? It's built on various pillars, and payments is always something that needs to be front and center when we're having these conversations, because ultimately the digital economy at some point in time always touches payment, whether it's payments in fiat, whether it's, when I say fiat, in terms of legal tender, Kenyan shillings, or if it's payment in crypto, or even if you look at more rural trading, where it's almost like a bartering system that takes place. So putting that on a digital economy and making sure that the actors are in communication with each other, so there's a good synergy between the banks and the virtual asset service providers, as opposed to shying away and acting as if this problem will go away, like crypto is some fad at that point in time. At some point in time, it's actually counterintuitive again. Recently, there was a survey that the Central Bank of Kenya released, where they showed that there was about 31% from banks and PSPs that were curious or willing to partner with crypto players, and it's a good survey and it's a good insight, right? I mean, 1% is better than 0%, but it's also not good enough.
The Virtual Asset Service Providers Bill of 2025, it's going to establish a licensing and supervisory framework for virtual asset service providers.
We wish it was sooner rather than later, but good things take time, as my mother would say. I would comment that as it is right now, it is a very robust bill. And I've engaged with various legislation from Seychelles, Mauritius, South Africa, Nigeria, etc., and policy discussions in Rwanda, Ghana, and I can put my name to it and say that the Virtual Asset Service Provider Bill for 2025 in Kenya is one of the better pieces of legislation I have seen on this continent, right? However, it would be such a shame to see that hard work and that good effort just be dismantled because of other key considerations, such as the digital asset tax. That is something that is very stifling. That is something that shouldn't be introduced if the intention is to create and promote innovation and also to attract foreign direct investment. The reason I say that is because the bill on its own needs other components so that it can flourish the way it's designed to, Other aspects that could probably be doubled down on or, highlighted. We've made these submissions before Parliament. Concepts like licensing, passporting, which ultimately, if you think of international licenses, driver's license, you don't necessarily have to redo what you've done to be qualified in another jurisdiction. There's probably one or two tests just to make sure that it's calibrated and that it's aligned, right? But then what that does, it enables fast tracking of the ecosystem to get up and running. And as Binance as a player with 23 licenses, that already gives you a measure that says, okay, this is a player that understands what licensing is about, has its ducks in a row, and they can start encouraging other players to, do like we do, in terms of taken compliance, taken regulation so seriously that you kind of already applying it before you even operate in.
As you come to a close, what's the future of crypto innovation in the country? Kenya, that is.
It's exciting. It's a beautiful time to be alive. I think Kenya is leading the race in terms of what it can do. I think you almost like at a boiling point, a tipping point, where one or two moves can either be a make or break. I think that, especially being at the blockchain conference, it's meeting all the young, vibrant professionals and experts in the space. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
There you have it. That is Larry Cook, head of Legal Africa Binance. A take home is that as a player within this particular industry, a consideration to the government to at least consider tiered taxation and phased out rollouts, as well as privacy safeguards to better support growth and inclusion. Looking at where the future is going when it comes to matters of the digital space, we're already finding ourselves here. So crypto innovation is not just about to, go latent. It's actually getting more vibrant as you go. I'm Regina Manyara. You're watching KBC Channel 1.